let me just bring it back to what you were talking about, issues. And I took the liberty of going through the manifesto of the two top candidates in last year's election. I'm going to read some of the issues and you'll tell me if they even sound... In Kenya's election, in the last election. Cynthia is asking, they have manifestos, what? So, the first one. Incorporate CCTV technology in the fight against crime. Provide government-funded life insurance cover for disciplined forces personnel so as to secure their livelihoods and their families' health. Does that sound familiar?
No.
Invest at least 2.5% of annual GDP in research and development.
They've invested all of it in their research and development.
That's not the point here, because the party who had this manifesto might not be in power.
Yeah.
But this doesn't even strike you as something that you've heard.
I remember reading the manifestos a while back, and they were saying the same thing.
Okay, allow me to finish. I have a few more points. Reduce public, we're always talking about our finances. Reduce the public deficit so that the government spends more money on services instead of paying off Kenya's debts. Sound familiar? Okay, I'll read one more. Keep the cost of living as low as possible by ensuring annual inflation is below 5%. Currently, we cap it at 7%. Invest at least 10% of GDP in infrastructure development over the next 5 years.
Sounds like fiction.
Okay, so if we don't know, no,
I mean,
hold
what do you mean by
on.
sounds familiar? I mean,
So,
I've heard these things being thrown around.
But if we don't really know what the candidates are trying to sell us, and we're putting this blanket assumption that these are just personalities, when are we ever going to go past that barrier? Yeah. That was my question. And I'd like to hear from the people who voted, because you're voting and you don't know the issues.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I have no idea about the manifesto of the person I voted for last time. I went with the crowd mentality, and in fact, so much so that there was a particular person I wanted to vote for who was not necessarily as popular as some of the more popular candidates. And we had this discussion, a very similar discussion, and I found myself at the ballot box hearing the voices of some of my friends and peers about my vote being a wasted vote if I do not vote for one of the most popular candidates. So my reason for voting last time, I think, is going to be very different from my reason for voting.
Okay, Cynthia, I want to hear from you. Do you have an opinion on wasted votes? Do you even believe that's a thing?
I don't. I think every vote really counts. And, primarily, I believe every vote counts, and the undercounted vote can really sway an election. Right? We've seen this. Unfortunately or unfortunately, my frame of reference is this last election that the U.S. had, because I followed it closely. And there, on the other hand, you can say, it depends on what's at stake. Let's say it depends on what's at stake. I don't think we've gotten to that point, that advanced, that we can look at two candidates with two opposing issues and we can say that, yeah, I have other views, but in this moment it's critical that I support the issues that uphold the values of my country.
Okay.
We're not there.
So let me bounce that question to Soito. Why aren't we there? Because the candidates are presenting this literature and they're saying this is my blueprint and this is the other ones, and you have a visual reference.
So we'll have to use history for this. So multi-party started in 92. When Moi won the elections, what happens is he comes into power and is the president, and he's a very powerful person even after accepting democracy in the country. But you find the places which get the most development are places around his home area, wherever he's from. So what that does to the country is we stop actually believing in the manifestos that are being published. We believe in the fact that the people who come into power look out for their own community, and then they thrive and they exist. They do so much better. So it becomes almost primal to a level where it's tribal. It's very simple. I understand that if I vote this guy in, he's going to help my grandparents, he's going to help my children and my community to be able to be more educated, to get better infrastructure. And that's how it happens, and that's how it's been for now the elections after 1992.
But when you look at the coalition government, for example, the roads that we have in this country are not just in one sort of pocket. it's a national agenda. If you look at what's happening with regard to our energy, trying to get people on the grid, it's a national approach. So how do we get that out of our, is it a cultural thing that we need to kind of floss out of our brains?
So then that's what I was trying to react to when you were talking about the lesser, maybe more, I don't know what to say, qualified candidates as individuals, but for me, they're a non-factor for me. They're a complete non-factor, because what happens when I look at
Basically,
a candidate,
anyone
it's about,
who is not a presidential candidate.
yes, it's because it's an organized party. You see, if you're talking about these other candidates, they were literally talking and they were pitching to us their manifesto as an individual. So I'm like, that looks great. This is what you think you're gonna do. But why are you the only person standing on your campaign? Why don't you have plans for people to be MCAs? Why don't you have plans for people to be senators? Why don't you have plans in your party for people to be governors?